Restorative practices is an approach used in K-12 schools that builds community and relationships between students and between teachers and students in an effort to prevent misbehavior from occurring within schools and also to increase the amount of connections that teachers and students have to each other. And then when misbehavior does arise, the approach emphasizes non-punitive methods. So instead of excluding students, like suspending them, for instance, it focuses on repairing harm and repairing the relationship that was fractured because of that misbehavior, and then also reintegrating students back into the school community.
So this partnership came about when district leaders from a couple of school districts and the Kent Intermediate School District in Kent County, Michigan, approached the Education Policy Innovation Collaborative, or EPIC, at Michigan State University. And the three of us, so myself, Jerome Graham, and Tasman Dollywall, were eventually identified as either MSU faculty or EPIC-affiliated researchers that would have the skills and expertise to support the type of work that those districts were looking for. And then we were able to recruit some other partner districts as well, and are even recruiting another one for inclusion in the second year of analysis, which is super exciting. The fact that it originated with those districts coming to EPIC with that practitioner interest is huge, because leadership and practitioner buy-in are really important for this type of work and for the success of the partnership.
Restorative practices complements our value of relationships in this district, and that's a long-standing value in Kentwood Public Schools. So we use a variety of strategies, including capturing kids' hearts, which really is between the teacher and the students, and co-constructing that social contract. We also use a system called positive behavior intervention supports. That's our school-wide expectations and how we make sure that we explicitly teach those expectations, affirm students when they are achieving them, but also reteach when we need to revisit some areas of need. And so then we looked at where in our system can we look at that whole child consideration, and how can we also teach the values and teach the skills that can extend beyond our school, because we know that kids only spend about 20% of their time at school, yet meaningful relationships still extend beyond, especially in this area of social media and technology that connects. And so restorative practices is about 80% of it is proactive, and how do we build those positive relationships? About 20% of our time is spending reacting to something that happened. And so we looked at rollout with fidelity over a multi-year period of time. We wanted to take a bite of the apple a little bit at a time, so that we can ensure that it's sustainable, it's systemic, but that we can monitor and evaluate and be responsive to the feedback from our teachers and our students.
I think this will impact our school community and our culture greatly. I want to start by saying that I think anytime you can bring data to your board who comes up with policy and give them concrete information, it helps them speak about the practices in the community. They are our front runners. They are the front line in the community, really addressing parents. So one, it makes us be intentional about getting them the information that they need, and it's data-driven information. That is what I like about this whole entire process, is we're getting concrete data. Michigan State decided to interview students, staff, myself, and like I said before, administrators. So that data helps us drive our decisions. So we're not just saying, we think we're doing this, we think we're not doing this. And I think the community needs to understand that. Having student voice in this is huge. And then getting parents on board with this so they understand, I think will have a great effect on our community. So we know culture and climate helps drive academic instruction. If you have a good culture and climate, your academic instruction will be stronger. If students feel like they belong and they have a voice in what's going on, your academics will be stronger. So we're hoping to take this to the next level so we can see better academic outcomes with this process.
We meet with MSU and EPIC. When the research comes out, we were able to sit alongside them in really working with districts to dig deeper into their data. So we wanted to say, let's dig deeper into your data, and then how can we situate ourselves not only in providing a professional learning community around restorative practices, but then really addressing, do we need to have more professional development around restorative practices as it relates to the initial 2-day training? Do we need to provide more training for the trainers so that we can get more people trained to be able to support the implementation at the district level, so that we can really look at circles and conferencing? So we worked alongside the districts to say, what do you have, what do you not have, and how can we help to fill that gap?
I would tell this story through the eyes of our kids. And there are some specific examples of children and families that have experienced, and I'll give one brief example just to illustrate this. We had a parent that was concerned as they watched their child line up for elementary school that their child was being harassed while they're waiting to get into school each morning. And the parent was concerned about what was going on. And so the parent reached out to the principal, and the principal suggested, how about we do a restorative conferences with the parents? We'll get the parent for the other student, we'll get you, we'll get a facilitator, and we'll have the conversation. And when the parents got together with a facilitator and they listened and understood each other and what was going on with their lives, we actually had this deeper meaning and sense of community and belonging, where you had a parent that came in saying, I want this child, kept away from my child, to saying, how can we maybe come together so that we can build a relationship instead of the experience we're having right now. It's a way that when we pause and we don't do the expedient measure, that we actually do the restorative measure, that we build greater sense of belonging. And so now we have families that know each other more deeply, children that know each other more deeply, but also the school knows the families more deeply. So that's just one example of a success, and there's many others that we could share as well.
The next steps of this work involve, one, continuing to do what we've done so far. As I mentioned, implementation is a process, and it's not just something that you arrive at where you say, okay, this thing is implemented. You continue to work at it, and we want to continue to be able to provide insights like those we've been able to do in this first year. And so we'll continue to do that work. But I would say ultimately the long-term goal is to think about how do we scale the work that we're doing and this sharing between districts across the entire ISD. We know that restorative practices are a big priority even at the state level, with state law mandating that restorative practices must be considered in exclusionary discipline decisions. And so we want to encourage other districts to join this partnership and ultimately land on this place where we have these districts working together to scale successes, to tackle problems, common problems in a collaborative way. And we think that as the partnership grows and more districts are involved, we'll have many more seats at the table, many more experiences, many more insights to draw on. So I would say those types of goals or next steps are really focused on the practice, kind of how we inform school leaders and district leaders. And then there are also research goals and adding to the body of evidence that exists about our restorative practices so that we are able to add our voice and share what we're learning from districts, from schools, from students, to add to the knowledge that exists about restorative practices. Because ultimately we realize that we can't continue as we have been. Our reliance on exclusionary discipline practices is really harmful. And restorative practices provides a proving alternative, and the more examples of success stories that we're able to provide, I think that just brings us way closer to replacing the exclusionary systems that we use with ones that center restoration and community.
We know in the field of education, the stakes have really never been higher, that the skills, the expectations of our students, even separate from the pandemic, but because of the pandemic, that the expectations of schools have never been higher. The resources allocated to schools have never been greater. And so we know that this is a great opportunity for schools to really leverage what research identifies as strategies to increase sense of belonging, but also to increase levels of learning. And so it is our hope that the learning that we have at Kentwood can be scaled to other districts, that the Michigan Department of Education, that other philanthropic entities, that intermediate school districts will say, how can we come together to support what happens in the classroom each and every day so that each child feels a sense of belonging so that they can realize their human potential.